The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Thank you for joining us today. We will begin in a few minutes as people are starting to arrive. Thank you. Well, welcome everyone to today's CIECA Cast. Today's presenter is Kim Campassi of Automotive Retail. The topic is new technology working with CIECA standards and development specifications. Kim is a co-founder and principal of Automotive Retail headquartered in Louisville, Colorado, and actually it should be Louisville, Colorado. Kim has experience in business process integration and B2B software and services across several industries, both here in North America and internationally. For the last 12 years, she has worked exclusively on automotive integration solutions across a broad range of business functions and clients. Since 2012, Kim has been a member of the STAR Steering Committee, helping to promote the development and use of standards for automotive retail. Before I turn over the presentation to Kim, audience, I'd like, if you have any questions, please direct them to me using the conference panel under questions. Okay, we have allotted some time at the end for those questions, and we will get to as many of them as we have time. I will now turn this over to Kim.
Okay.
You just have to share.
Thank you, Fred. Yeah, just getting there. Can you hear me okay?
Perfectly.
All right, excellent, excellent. All right. So thank you for the warm welcome and introduction, and really appreciate the opportunity to be here and be part of this CIECA today. So let me start. I'm going to start with a couple of slides and then we'll kind of go from there. But what I wanted to do first off was just highlight a few of the priorities that Fred, you and Charlie have mentioned as being important to CIECA members today, and really what kind of lies behind, if you like, the reason for this CIECA. And you know, at its essence, of course, it's about promoting, you know, greater adoption of the CIECA standards. And as members ourselves, you know, this is something that, you know, that we certainly understand and appreciate. I won't read through all of these bullet points, but let me just simply say that, you know, if you look at the list of those priorities, you know, what's a common denominator? And, you know, I think really the common thread is the need for fast and efficient, you know, business process integration, and how we go about, you know, just implementing those types of solutions. So to give you just a little bit of background above and beyond what you just shared about me personally, Fred, I wanted to just talk a little bit about Motive for a second, because, you know, back in 2008, we began managing, you know, global integration programs for companies like Ford and Daimler out of Stuttgart in Germany, and it was pretty clear. It became pretty clear quite quickly that, you know, they had a need for robust data integration. Their needs were accelerating, but the tools and the processes that they were using to implement these large-scale programs that were going to get rolled out across, you know, many different trading partners had really stagnated. And from our side, you know, while we had strong experience and good technical expertise, we also lacked any integration software to really help us better manage these programs on their behalf. And so without that software, you know, what was happening was we were spending money on support to run these programs and on manual activities, which frankly we didn't need to spend, and maybe there's others on the phone today that can kind of relate to that. So what we did is, we kind of took a little bit of a step back, and we looked at, well, what were some of the limitations that we were facing. And a key one was just a lack of scalability. We needed a way that we could scale our processes across each new project and program that we were responsible for. We had our delivery times were too slow, and even worse, at times too unpredictable. And a lot of that was due to manual processes, in our approach. We also had, I think, a kind of a lack of visibility across all of the involved parties, especially where we had, trading partners that were implementing interfaces all around the globe. Data specifications, that was a big one. When it came to defining data specifications, we found like we had kind of a lack of any real good version control, and that just led to opportunities for our team to make human errors when updates or changes came down from our clients. And of course, changes and updates always do occur. So, at the end of the day, I think what we really were finding was that we were using highly skilled technical resources, and too often they were performing manual and repetitive tasks. So we started with a clean slate and tried to focus on addressing what we felt were the biggest pain points and roadblocks around how to make the implementation of interfaces across trading partners faster. And frankly, just in the last 6 months, some of what we've done allowed us over the last 6 months to complete 100 different unique system certifications for new interfaces that spanned multiple continents and industries. So Motive Integrator is our integration automation platform that we developed. And there's a lot that goes on in this platform, and I'm not going to touch on touch on all of it today. What I want to do today is just share kind of 3 of the apps that are part of the platform, which I think could be most interesting or and potentially relevant to CIECA and its members. Before I do though, just a couple of quick things, because I want to just kind of provide a little bit of context so that folks can kind of follow along, where we're going here. So first off, Motive Integrator, it's a multi-user and multi-role platform. So basically, it's a place where companies, let's say an insurance company as an example, or others, can define their use of the CIECA standards for a given implementation. And we think of those users or those companies as publishers. So as in, excuse me, as in, the publisher of an interface and specification. On the other hand, their trading partners, which we'll often think of as a subscriber, they can access those specifications and test their implementation all within the same platform. So as I move through, the system here and what I'm going to show you, I'm going to switch back and forth a couple of times. Hopefully I won't lose folks and it will be clear enough, but we'll show from kind of a publisher's perspective as well as from a subscriber or trading partner perspective. So what we're going to see is, first off, we'll start with XDesign, which is an app within the platform. And what XDesign does is it allows us to import a CIECA or for that matter, any other XML schema, and let that user define its use of a CIECA BMS, a CIECA message, without compromising the integrity of the standards. And then within that XDesign app, you can define the use of optional fields and add the necessary data and business rules, and then automatically generate a data specification, sample files, and configure the testing system that lives within inside Motive Integrator. We're also going to show something that we call MMP, also known as Manage My Project or Manage My Projects. And that's the entry point into the system for publishing a project and the associated interfaces and messages. And then lastly, I'll show one of our testing apps called the XML Evaluator, which is used for evaluating messages against both the CIECA schema as well as all of the requirements that are defined for a particular implementation. Okay, so let me get into the system. And I'm going to open up a browser here real quick, and we're going to go into the demo environment for Motive Integrator, and I'm going to log in as a publisher. Okay. All right, so this takes me just to the homepage for Motive Integrator, and you'll see across the top, the blue bar across the top is a navigation that lets us get to different sections that this particular user that I've set up here has access to. And if you notice, the publisher, I'm sorry, on the top right-hand corner here, just in case you need a reference point for what persona or what user I'm acting as. I'm acting right now as a publisher. So this is a user who's going to define their implementation requirements and set up a project for access by their trading partners. So I'm going to start by going to the XDesign tab, and I'll click on the XDesign app. And so this is the app that we'll use to start the process. So first step, I'm going to select a schema, and I've got some test schemas in here. And then the root element that we're using, which in this case, I'm going to take the RO, the repair order close response, as part of the repair status messages. So then once I submit that, what will return then is essentially the CIECA message. Now this is a small one, and I intentionally chose a little one just to kind of make it a little easier for purposes of the webinar. But what I can do then is I can click on and expand it out, and you can imagine where if this was a very large one, as many of the CIECA messages are, it gives me then a tree view into the structure of this message. And you'll see those items, those aspects here that are grayed out are required, technically required by CIECA. But there are, in many of the messages, a lot of optional elements, optional fields that for any given implementation, a publisher may need to use for their project. And so in this case, I'm going to click on a couple. I'm simply going to take the partner key, and I'm going to select the application error and the error description. And so I'm essentially kind of creating a subset at some level, if you like. And I'll click on Submit Constraints. And what that does then is it takes me to a screen that has carried across those selections that I just made. So it takes across not only those aspects of the message that are defined and required by CIECA and by, not to get too technical, but by the schema that CIECA uses, but also those pieces that I've just selected. And you'll see within this view, and again, I took a very small message just to kind of make this easy, those items that are colored out in gray, I can't change. And that's what keeps me in sync with the CIECA standard. Those items that are in white, though, I can, and this is where I can take that next step to define more closely or more tightly how I need to use them. So I'm going to take, as an example, I'm going to take the error description here, and I'm going to make it required from an occurrence perspective, and I'm going to change the character type to just alphanumeric instead of alphanumeric special, all of which is allowed within CIECA. And then I'm going to add the valid value that I need for my implementation, which, to keep it simple today, I'm just going to use test. Okay. And I can click on other enumerated values if I want to more narrowly define which enumerated values I'm using. Once I'm done, so you can imagine it, with large message, I'll go through each of these fields, and once I'm done, I'll click Submit Constraints. Okay. And then this takes me to the last step, which is where we add what we call kind of some business context. And so what we find is that sometimes the schema, element, and attribute names can be somewhat technical sounding or technical in nature. So we like to provide the opportunity to add in kind of a bit more of a human-friendly or a system-friendly, perhaps, field name. We'll also add in field descriptions. And what we're trying to do here is to provide that additional context for the users who will be reading this specification and needing to implement the message within their system. And here at Carried Across, you see the valid value that I added of test, and I'm going to make it even clearer for them because I want no ambiguity here of what the business rule is. And so I'm just again going to keep it simple and keep with this error description. I've clicked Submit, and I'm done. Obviously, that would take a few more minutes if I had a larger message, but I've, like I said, chosen a small one. So what I'll do from here then is I'm going to navigate back up the top to the Publisher tools. Excuse me. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on Manage My Projects. And so it's within Manage My Projects where I can create both the project, the interfaces, I'm losing my voice already, the interfaces that are associated with the project, and then the messages that are associated with an interface. And you can imagine, for those of you who have done a lot of this, that very often there are multiple interfaces with multiple messages that are used to within a given project. And so Manage My Projects, what we'll do as the first step is we're going to create a new project to take the message that we've just created. And so we'll call it the CCast. So it'll show up here as our test project. We would add a description. And then we're going to select a JPEG, an icon, which you'll see in a minute how this comes into play. And then we have different site templates that we use for the projects. I'm just going to click on the demo one here, and I'll hit Create. And this just takes a couple of seconds while it creates the new project. And there you see it. So we have the CIECA project. Next step is to create the interfaces that are associated with that project. So for today, I'm just going to create one, and it's going to be a simple one that I'll just simply call the RO interface test. I would add a description. I would add my reviewer email, and this the reviewer email, and you'll see also a reviewer response time. This comes into play with some of the additional testing tools. It's required fields, so I'll just add those here now, and I'll save changes. And so there is my interface for my CIECA project. And again, if I had multiple interfaces, I would repeat that process. Now what I'll do is, for this RO interface, it's going to, for purposes of my demo here, it's going to use the repair order close response, and I'm going to take what we call an XID, or the definition, the implementation definition that we created a minute ago in XDesign, and I'm going to go find that, and I'll select that. It comes through with the name. I'm going to choose for status. I'm just going to go straight to published. And then the origin speaks to the originator, essentially, of the message. So in this case, again, in our vernacular, this would be a publisher who would be sending the response message, and of course the type is a response. and I'll hit save. Okay. So what I've done is I've created my definition for my response message, and now I've created my project, my interface, and the message that is part of that interface. So let me go back to the top navigation, and I'll go over to the project section. And what we'll see here then is we'll see the CCAST test project that we just created here. So you see the CIECA icon, that's where I uploaded the icon a minute ago. So if I click on this, what was just created then was, based on the definitions that we had defined, it's created a set of data specifications and sample documents for this project and this interface. Before I show you that though, let me just do one more thing. One of the things that we also do is we provide a knowledge base which allows for publishing, all information that might be needed for a project. So, in addition to the data specs and the sample files. And so this way, whether it's information related to the web service communications or business processes, or maybe there's project guidelines that you want to make sure are clear, all of it can be found here in the same place. So what I'm doing here is I've just taken some basic content just out of the CIECA implementation guide, just so I could, just for demo, and I'll publish it here. And as my screen refreshes, then what you'll see is now you'll see the content and the data specifications and sample files that we already automatically published. So everything is here in the one place for both my users as a publisher as well as the users of my trading partners who will be implementing this interface. So let me click on the active specs. Let me just kind of show you these real quick. So the active spec, what we found is developers in particular seem to like this format, and especially when the messages are really large. So this is probably not the greatest example to show this off because it's a small one, but what the active spec enables them to see is the structure of the message, because I can expand and I can collapse each component within the message. And if I mouse over here, you'll see I can also see, all of the data requirements. So, here is my error description, where a minute ago you saw where I added in that the only accepted value was test, and we changed it to reflect that the character type was alphanumeric. And you'll see at the top here, it shows the element name that CIECA uses and the XPath within the CIECA schema. So let me close out of this, and let me show you the next one, what we call static specs. And it's really, the static spec is essentially, it's providing the same info. It's just a slightly different format. So some users prefer it because what you can do with this is you can copy it into Excel, and if you notice even on the right-hand side there, you'll see there's an alias column, and that often gets used for mapping of database fields from to the CIECA fields. So again, we tend to just offer both versions, and then users use what works best for them. And then lastly here I have the sample documents. So let me just download those quickly. These were also generated directly out of XDesign and our configuration as we set it up within MMP. And we provide a kind of a standard set of four messages. And so we have kind of let me go back here so I can just show you. We have the close response. Of course, our RO close response is the message that we're talking about here. So we have an every choice, first choice, last choice, repeating first choice. And what I've opened here in the background you'll see is the first one. And what these sample messages are doing is they're populating data within the files that are conforming to what I've just set up. So you'll see here that the error description must have test, and so it shows the developer then as another way to help improve their understanding between the data specifications and the sample file that test is what's required. Okay, so let me get out of that, and I'm going to kind of change gears here for a second, and let me sign out, and I'm going to log back in as a subscriber, or again, think of it as a trading partner who is implementing that interface that was just set up. Except that because we took a pretty simple one, I'm going to actually use the RO close request, which is a larger message, and enabled me to set it up before this CCast so that I could put more interesting, let's say, requirements in here. So I simply did exactly the process that I've just shown you with the simple response message, and I followed along the implementation guides and then chose different fields that I made as required and set up the appropriate data and business rules for those. But let me, as a subscriber, let me just make one other comment. You'll see on the blue navigation bar at the top, two pieces that are missing here, XDesign and Publisher Tools that you saw a second ago don't exist because they're not relevant here when I'm logged in as a subscriber or as a trading partner. So what I want to do is I'm going to go over to the XML Evaluator, which is one of the testing tools that we have, and what I want to show you today. And what the XML Evaluator is basically, for a trading partner, it's offering them a way to verify that they're on the right track during both their development as well as during regression testing. So they can use it as a unit testing tool, in particular during the development. And what they want to ensure is that the messages that their system is producing conform not just with the CIECA standards, but also to the specific requirements that were defined within those CIECA messages by our publisher. So it really operates as a kind of a self-service tool. They can access it anytime, and it provides them then instantaneous feedback to help guide and assist the developer. So you'll see here I selected my, and I only have the one set up here for my test. I have the project, the interface, the message. I'm going to choose a file. So what I've done as a developer, I've built my payload within my system. This is the file that my system is producing. I've saved it off, and I'm now going to upload it and submit it for evaluation. And unfortunately, it's come back with a schema validation error. And so for those, I apologize for those non-technical folks on the phone, but hopefully this will resonate with others, where what this has done is the XML Evaluator has first checked to ensure that the message that was being produced or has been produced by the trading partner system is conforming to the CIECA schema. And in this case, it's not. And so before they can do anything further, they'll need to go back and make changes to their code. So once they've completed those changes, which could take minutes or weeks or months, as the case may be, they can come back and they can upload a new file and submit. And they can do this as many times as it takes. And if there are 25 errors, if there are 40 errors, these will all show up. So in this case, I show now errors. I'm not showing a schema error, but I'm showing what we call validation errors that are a function of errors that are in their message that they've uploaded, where that message is not conforming to the requirements that the publisher specified. So on the left-hand side, where it says validation detail, this provides a let's call it a human or an easy to read, easy to follow error message that will help guide the developer into what he or she has done wrong. So, the first one you'll see here, we have the repair order ID element. Within that element, the repair order close request component must have an alphanumeric value. And as you see through some of these others, it's defining very specifically if it's required or what the requirements were for that specific field. Even down to where we have an example here at the end of relationships between data, where in this case, if a company name is present, then you have to include the phone number. On the right-hand side, you'll see the error location, and this is kind of the more technical side of this messaging, where it's now showing the error location within the CIECA message where the error occurred. Okay? So I'm going to go back. I'm going to repeat the evaluation again. This time I'm going to take my good file and I'll submit it, and I find validation reported no problems. And this is, of course, what the user is ultimately going for. Okay. All right, let me change gears one last time. I'll sign out. I'm going to log back in as the publisher, and I just want to show kind of one last step. So at the beginning here, we started with a pretty small message, and we showed how we selected the schema and we created that definition. We created the project, the interfaces, or the interface, and published it into the platform, and we have our CCAST project. I'm going to take the one that we were just looking at, though, which is a larger one, and it turns out that there's an update that needs to be made, which is a pretty common use case. So I'm going to go back to XDesign, and I just want to show how quickly these can be made. So I'll select, I'll go onto my edit my existing XID because this has already been developed. I'll come to the same screen we saw a minute ago, and this message is a little larger, so you'll see it here. And in this case, what I've determined is that the claim number had not been selected, and we really need the claim number, and it's a key aspect of this interface that is required by all of my trading partners to be sent to me. So I'm going to select that, and all I did was simply come in and select that claim number and leave everything else as it was. And now I'm back in the screen again where I can further define how that claim number needs to be set up. So in this case, I'm going to change it from optional to making it required. I'm going to change it from being an alphanumeric special to just alphanumeric because that's all that my system can handle. And I'm going to specifically list out how the format needs to come to me. So the 3 alpha followed by 4 numeric. And you'll see also, you'll see here the blue box with the define rule. This gives me another option for how I can define my rules. Let me just click on the edit rule. I've got one in here for the company name that you saw a minute ago. This provides kind of a power user, or for more advanced users, where we need to define more complex technical requirements. So, if you think back for a second here with the XML evaluator that we were just showing, first off we showed where the evaluator was checking for schema. We then showed where it returned error messages related to data requirements. So, was this a field that was required and was not included? What are the enumerated values? What are the formats or field lengths? We can also, though, do some fairly sophisticated business rules around the data. So conditionally required. So like this one, and like you saw in the error message a minute ago, our example where, if the company name exists, then we need the phone number. The reverse is true. We can have, conditionally allowed or disallowed fields. So something like, if a customer type is an organization, then the address type can't be personal. We can go all the way down into, some internal consistency type calculations. So this is kind of the power user view, and I'm not going to belabor that for today, but that's how we get into some of those more sophisticated validations. So for here, I'll click Submit Constraints. Takes me to my last screen that you saw there was the business context. This was where we were adding in a field name and field description, and I wanted to simply do that in case somebody's not quite clear what claim num means. And then again, in the same way as I did a minute ago, I'm going to make it just dead obvious that this is the only accepted format that we'll take. And I'll submit, and that will save. And I'm done making the edit. So my final step now is to go back to the Publisher tools and back to our MMP or Manage My Projects app. And in this case now, if you see at the top there, in fact, you'll see this was the CCAS project that we did a few minutes ago. But in this case, I took the RO close request, sorry, I'm getting tongue twisted here, and this was already set up. So I don't need to go back in and set up a project or set up the interfaces. All of this was in there. What I need to do is go in and associate the new data definition, or what we call an XID, with that interface. So I simply come back in, I select it, and I save. And what that's done then is it has saved those changes that I just made to that definition where I've added the claim number. So if I went over to my project, I would see that in my active spec. That's all automatically happened. Let me just show it to you from a different perspective though. I'm going to click here. So this is the same tool that you just saw a minute ago, except I'm using it now as a publisher, because I want to just come in and I want to double check. And I know I have a good file that I was using for my testing purposes prior to making this change. And in fact, for this demo, it's the same file that I just used a minute ago as the trading partner. So I'm going to come in here and I'll select my project, and I'm going to choose that good file that we know that a minute ago was perfectly fine being evaluated for that close request message, RO close, and I'll submit it. And now we see that it returns an error. And so on the validation detail, you'll see that within the claim number element, within the claim number element, that it is now required. Lost my train of thought there for a second. And then on the error location, again, it shows us the location where this occurs. So let me just summarize here for a second, and hopefully I haven't lost too many of you as we've walked through this. So first off, I started by selecting a BMS and a specific schema in the XDesign app, and I took the repair status messages and particularly the RO close response. Then I selected the additional fields, which are optional within CIECA, but for my implementation, I needed them, and I further defined how they would be used. From there, I then went over into the MMP app, and I created a project within Motive Integrator where I published the specifications and sample files, all which were automatically produced. And in that step, it also configured the testing environment. I then logged out, and I showed then how a trading partner would be a beneficiary of using both those specifications and the testing environment. And so I demonstrated one of the testing apps, the XML Evaluator, by logging in as that trading partner and showing how he or she would simply upload the message produced by their system to test it against the requirements that that were needed for that implementation that the publisher had defined. And for that one, I actually used the RO closed request, which I'd set up ahead of time so that I could kind of show some more interesting error conditions, because it's a larger message. And then lastly, I made an edit to that very same project to show how simple it is to just make updates, where I logged back in as the publisher and I added the claim number, published the new message to the project, which was already set up, and which automatically updated the data specification. And then just so that I could show the change, I took the file that we knew was good, and you see it here on the screen, where it now throws an error because it doesn't include the claim number, because that's now a new requirement. So in essence, what we're doing here is, we're automating the definition and creation of the data requirements. We're automating the publication and the management of projects across trading partners within the same platform, and then we're automating the testing of CIECA messages. Okay, so that's kind of really all I wanted to show in terms of the system. I think, in closing, I hope that this, gives folks on the phone here some ideas, and obviously I've shown, some ways where, the implementation of new interfaces can be streamlined. And, and I think, as I take a step back and focus on, back to the beginning and some of the objectives that Fred and Charlie have talked about for CIECA and its members, I know this was a fairly kind of technically oriented discussion, but the fact is that integration is really not just a technical issue any longer, and it really has become a business imperative. And you can see, these are just a couple of examples that we think of that are reasons why the complexities around business process integration and the pace at which we all need to move are just pushing industries further and further, and standards bodies like CIECA further and further across all verticals. And and certainly a key one is is the consumer expectations. I know for myself and all of us, I think we all these days expect a premier experience from everyone that we interact with, and that's going to require more integration of systems, and perhaps even ultimately determine which companies remain relevant and thrive, and which ones don't. So with that, that's really all I had to share today. As Fred, as you mentioned at the beginning, I'm more than happy if there are questions to take any questions, or certainly we can take any follow-up questions offline later on if they come up.
Sure. I think we're okay for now, and we're just kind of keeping in line with our timing. I will say this, that we're Charlie, I know, is looking at today has to manually generate the implementation guides, and one of the things that we are personally looking at is the use of XDesign and being able, because those implementation guides say, even though these optional fields, they're optional in the schema, they are required for this type of an assignment, and a different assignment, those are not used, but another set. So the optional fields is extremely important and time consuming, quite frankly. So that's the thing. But again, I thank you very much, Kim, for that great presentation. Please join us for our next CIECA cast. The next one will be on April 25th, which we'll have a presentation from the Combined Environmental Reporting Committee. Also would like to make sure that you keep the dates open. The dates of September 18th through the 20th in Cleveland for our annual symposium. It's going to be a great one. We've got a great venue. That concludes today's CIECA cast. Thank you for joining us. And as always, a video of today's presentation will be available on the CIECA website within 48 hours. Thank you and have a great day.